You are listening to Missed Apex Podcast. We love MotoGP. Hello and welcome to Missed Apex MotoGP Podcast. This is a show put together by MotoGP fans pretending to be experts. We aim to have a race review show ready for a midweek commute. We may just be punters, but we love to talk. Hot, greasy, and slippery is a good way to describe me as I was shouting at the screen during an epic opening round in Thailand. Passes, contact, retirements, and controversy. Round one has perfectly set the scene for the season ahead. I am your host, Kyle Power, and as usual, I am joined by some fellow MotoGP enthusiasts. In the co-host seat, it's Dutch journo extraordinaire, Jules Seegers. How's it going, Jules?
What's up, Kyle? I think we all wanted the season to start, and boy, we didn't get disappointed. So, let's get this show on the road.
Absolutely, and to help us get the show on the road, we have our token northerner, Danny Henny. How's it going, Danny?
Hey, Kyle. Yeah, what an opener to the season, and more of that, please.
Yeah, absolutely. So without further ado, we'll get straight into it. We're going to try and keep the shows a little bit shorter now and a bit more concise to the point. So coming into this weekend, then we obviously have no Fermin Aldeguer. He's still recovering from his broken femur. He'll hopefully be back at the next race in Brazil. He's got another 3 weeks to wait for that, but he's being replaced by Michele Pirro. Aprilia's looking mega quick on the Friday, bears with an all-time lap record, and then follows it up with a couple of crashes in the morning, and then pole position before crashing. Martini's really quick as well. His teammate is returning. Remember, he missed the first test. And so he's coming back, but he's been quick. He's been in the top 5 all weekends, looking really good. Raul Fernandez getting a front row from Q1, which is absolutely amazing. And talking about Q1, we had Bagnaia struggling again, couldn't even get out of Q1 and ended up only P13 on the grid. And a weakened Ducati effort and a weakened Marc Marquez after having some poisoning, I think food poisoning or tummy bug, he said, during testing, and clearly not in the best form with his shoulder still, because he looked weak, but he managed to salvage a P2 in quali after not looking too clever at all, really. And another major bit of news, we now have a fantasy MotoGP league. Come and join us by following the link in the description, but a little bit more on that later. So the quali results then, we've got Bezzecchi on pole, Marc Marquez in second, Raul Fernandez in third, with Fabio Di Giannantonio, Jorge Martin and Pedro Acosta completing row 2. So let's go on and let's have a look at the sprint, shall we? So then, guys, let's not mess around. What an epic start, but let's get straight to the crunch point. And unfortunately, what I think is the main talking point of the sprint, that penalty for Marc Marquez versus Pedro Acosta. Jules, was that penalty correct or not? And why?
We've seen a lot of these passes in the last couple of seasons, and I think everybody's memory, if working properly, went back to the Misano Grand Prix in 24, where Enea Bastianini, did pretty much the same or even worse to Jorge Martin, who was then leading the race, to snatch the win from Jorge Martin's hands. And I was thinking about that, and I don't remember we really made a fuss about that in our race review.
No, I don't think we did.
Oh yeah, block pass,
Yeah, hard but fair. I think we kind of signed it off as rude, but kind of okay.
Yeah. We weren't like waving our arms like, oh, what's this? So, but it's clear that there's some new stewarding. A new race director in the person of Simon Crafar, and where it was help me, guys, what Freddie Spencer.
Oh, was he the one in Misano, was he?
Yeah, and but to get back to the sprint, so in first instance, I thought, that's it, a shame for Acosta, but when the television graphic came on the top of the screen, like, oh, it's under investigation, I was like, oh, whoa, really? Was it? Did I not see it correctly, or was it indeed that severe? And it wasn't that severe, but looking back at it, I can see if this is the line of ruling they want to follow. I can totally get with that, because if you saw where Marquez was coming from, he was coming from pretty far behind, and he was not going to make that turn. And we have had this discussion in the Formula One pod for episodes and episodes and episodes, and I think, yeah, nobody really likes it when a win is decided by a move of a rider who is never going to make that turn, and his sole purpose, his sole idea is to block the other one from winning the race, and moving him that far out and slowing him that far down that he's not going to be able to make the cutback. So in that aspect, I was like, okay, I like this. I like this new understanding of what's fair and what's not. And but we might get into that a bit later on. I thought it was really telling that Marquez did this move.
Yeah, just to follow up before we go to Danny, he did make the corner. He just went wide. He did very much make the corner, didn't he, Danny? What's your views on it, Danny?
I can't believe I'm going to say this as a fan of hard racing, but I actually think it was a fair penalty with how far Mark came back from. I think if Mark was a lot closer and the usual distance behind where you'd say like a late moves on him, I think he would have been okay. But it was just, he come from miles back. He come from like the previous straight. It was just a very aggressive move, which we want to see. The contact was minimal, so I do think it was fair. But I think over the season, if we saw 10 of those moves, I think you'd get 5 given and 5 get away with. I don't think it was anything too drastic, but it did kind of ruin the end of the race a little bit, which was what a brilliant battle. But yeah, my review of it, I'd say it was a fair penalty, but touch and go.
Yeah, so I might as well wade in with my view now. I'm similar to the others. When I first saw it, I was like, oh, they're probably going to have a look at that, maybe. But then when I watched the replays, more of it, afterwards, I'm like, initial first thoughts were, that's probably going to be a penalty. I watched it on the world feed, but even on the BT feed or the TNT feed, when he gave back, like Hodgson was like, oh, waste direction, are probably going to have a look at that because it went wide. But then I think there's some context around it. So yes, there was a tiny bit of contact, but if we'd seen on previous laps, Pedro had done a very similar dive bomb on Mark, like very, very late, and Mark could see it coming and kind of stood the bike up and undercut him and cut back under again. Whereas in this instance, Pedro kind of didn't. He kind of lets the brakes off to stay leveled with him and leaning on him around the outside, and that's where the little bump occurs. So I think if Pedro would have seen it coming, stood the bike up to cut back underneath him, then it wouldn't have been any issue. Like, there is no denying whatsoever that Mark was in hot. Like, Mark was definitely in hot, and it was we've already made one already, but I'm going to go out and make an F1 reference straight away. It was a Max Verstappen-esque kind of dive bomb, shovey sort of move, Danny. I think it was rude. Do you think Pedro, if he'd have wanted to, done the cutback move, or do you think he was already committed into the corner?
It's difficult. I think if he wanted to, he could have done the cutback, but I think Pedro knew what he was doing in that position. You know, don't you? If you can get a penalty given and turn in a little bit tighter to make sure there's a bit of contact, it goes in your favour. What I would say is, always we had you watching the commentary, we don't want to see this these type of penalties put riders off making the move, because it was great. You want to see them go for the move. So while it was a fair penalty, I think we don't want to see riders swayed away from making that kind of aggressive move, especially late in the race.
Yeah, so Jules, one of Mark's gripes was he took it on the chin and was pretty much said, yeah, I respect the decision. He took it on the chin despite his little clap towards race control when it was coming round into the thing, which I thought was brilliant. He said he accepted it, but I think his major gripe that he's been moaning about was when they told him. So he was like, I only knew in the last corner. And to be honest, when I see it flick up, like it come in about half a lap before the end, but that's when they're in those really fast sweepers. So he's hanging off the end of the bike. You're not going to see it on your dash. I'm amazed he saw it on his dash. And that makes me think that maybe he was looking for it. He thought the message might be coming because it's the last lap. You're not really going to be looking much, are you, Jules? So I don't know. Do you think it's fair to give it out that late?
I think it was really quick that they made the decision. I mean, that was within a lap. But I really appreciate that they did it this way, instead of, afterwards you have to read on one of the
Yep, so
websites
on.
that the race result is adjusted. I think you're right. If you're gonna see it in the infield bit of the track, then you're looking for it. And of course he must have felt like, okay, this could be a tricky one. I know he said, like, I only saw it, or I got it in the penultimate corner, but that obviously wasn't the case, because he already let Acosta go before that. But I understand this point. It's late, but I think all of the fans, the people watching, can appreciate this 100 times more than watching a race finish and then later on learn that the winner you saw is not the winner.
Yeah.
The cynical clapping in the direction of the race director, I thought, how doesn't matter how many titles you win or how old you get. Some things you just don't lose, or you just don't outgrow
The winner's sass.
as a true competitor. Yeah, and that's what I was referring to just a bit earlier when I said, like, the reason he did this move, I couldn't help but think he wants to make this point. And everybody knows Acosta is rumored to be his new teammate. I don't know the exact origins of it, but it's understood that Acosta isn't like his Spanish mate, like some of the other Spanish
I don't think they
riders
get on particularly
along,
well.
fine. Yeah, and it felt to me like he really wanted to make his mark in the first race of the season. Like, you're not gonna grab this win from me, and I'm the smarter one of the two of us. Like, he just couldn't let it go. Was my feeling.
Yeah, and I think it was great to see the battle between them. But what I think I enjoyed the most is not one of them really moaned afterwards. I know Mark did a bit of cynical clapping, but it was really good to see them pretty much both say, I really enjoyed that battle, irrelevant of the result, bring it on. And it's the first time we've really seen them go at each other on kind of, I'd say I know Mark was having a bit of an off day, but kind of equal machinery. So yeah, it was a great battle. And I think just going back to it, Mark was only in that position because he kind of got caught out. He come out there and he said he was trying to manage the pace of the race, and I think he slightly missed just how fast Acosta was coming after him.
Yeah, absolutely. And to go back to what point Jules made earlier, like, he actually let Acosta through on the very final turn. So he said he only saw the message when he come out of, like, the penultimate complex, and that's when he saw, but you wouldn't have a chance to look at your screen before then. So the fact that he actually had a quick look and he actually reacted in time, I thought was amazing. And just to go back, to say about how well it was dealt with, they were instantly, like, shook hands over the line. Acosta said he didn't think there was much wrong with the move. And did you see Acosta, like, gesticulate? He didn't see it because he turned the other way to Mark. He was like, what, WTF? What the hell was that? And he was a bit miffed. That he was really surprised that Mark let him through. Just about every ex-rider I have seen online or on social media has been not happy with the penalty and reckon the move was fine, including quite a few riders actually in MotoGP. I think Zarco said he thought it was fine. Acosta generally thought it was fine. Ducati weren't happy about it. Mark played it pretty diplomatic, apart from the sarcastic clapping, but played it pretty diplomatic and went straight up to Pedro afterwards. And it's good to see the respect there, because I don't think Pedro's really chummy with anybody, but I think there's always been a little bit of needle between him and Marc Marquez's, because I think in Pedro's mind, we'll talk about him a bit more later, but in Pedro's mind, he thinks he probably is the next Marquez. And Jules is exactly right. It's just putting they're just literally, they're like marking their territories out in the sand, Danny.
I'll tell you what it reminded me of when Marquez put that move on Rossi at Laguna Seca, and everybody said the same kind of thing. Really aggressive move on him. Respect after the race. Obviously, they fell out a long time afterwards, but it reminded me of that. The young kid turning up and kind of putting his move on the old master to kind of say, I'm here, son. Let's get ready for more of it.
Yeah, it's brilliant. And let's move on, actually, because it has actually overshadowed almost what was probably the best sprint I think I've ever seen. Personally, it was absolutely incredible because during that sprint we had, coming off the start, like you got Marc Marquez getting the whole shot, him and Bez swapping positions like 3 times in the first couple of laps before Bez then stupidly bins it. He's doing Marquez things, which we expect silly stuff like this from Marc, but this is like Bez making these silly mistakes like he did in Indonesia last year when his pace is so much stronger than everyone else's that it was strange. I think he knew Marc was going to be messing with him and interfering with him, so he was just pushing extra hard to try and break that gap, and it went down. So we got that, and then as Danny said, I think Marc said he wants to slow the race down because, well, maybe because of his physical condition. He's managing himself and the tyres. But then we got the Acosta coming in and Fernandez as well there. There were loads of them there, and it was a great battle. There's several. It was all down the field. There were some absolutely epic battles. And this is exactly what we want. Like, it come in. I'm used to slow starts, slow burners of seasons, and it be slow. I mean, the race last year was semi-exciting. The sprint wasn't all that, but that was just, wow, what? I didn't sit down for most of the race. Absolutely incredible. So, Jules, like, could we have started in a better way? I don't think so.
I don't think so either. I mean, we saw various manufacturers leading the race. We saw different teams, riders from different teams, fighting for first position. We saw the very much favorite rider crash out. We saw young guns going for it, and you'd almost forget this. We saw Jorge Martin back. And not only like, he's filling up the field, but he was right up there, especially in the beginning. Getting into his rhythm, and I thought that was really good to see. I mean, you'd almost forget that he was a front runner for a couple of seasons, really. And then last season, it took so much away from how fierce and fast this guy could be. So I thought it was a really, really good thing to see him up there as well, because we saw him come back I think 2 times last season, but then he was like P12, P11, and you didn't really notice him. But now he was in the television director's eye, and the director caught that, and I thought it was really good to see.
Yeah, I can't argue with that. It was great. I was kind of almost pinching myself thinking, this is the first time we're actually seeing it. This is the mythical unknown species of Jorge Martin on an Aprilia that we're not used to seeing in the wild at all. And it was brilliant. He did really, really well. Where was he? Was he 5th in the sprint? Yeah, 5th. Like really 5th. Because Agora was up there as well.
5th.
Yeah, it came for so really good, really strong. It was brilliant. So in the end, so Acosta gets his first win. I love some of Acosta's interviews as well. Someone said, "You finally beat Marquez," and he was like, "Beat" in like inverted commas. He was not accepting it. He seemed a bit miffed, a bit annoyed that he won like that. But hey, a win is a win, and it's like a long time coming for him. So yeah, so Acosta wins. Marc Marquez is a bit of a miffed second. Raul Fernandez, amazing in third. Agora, so a track house for third and fourth. Absolutely amazing. With Jorge Martin coming in 5th, which set up a great prospect for the Grand Prix. So, on to the Grand Prix review then. And as usual, we like to split it up into some major headline topics and try and cover a few things around there. So the first people I want to talk about then, we have to. It's basically the fastest people away weekend, which is Bezzecchi and Aprilia. And Jules, on that performance, but knowing some of the contacts and the caveats around it, do you think they're genuine title threats?
I think there can be put some asterisks surrounding the results and the race we saw this weekend, but I think it's not hard to believe that Aprilia are really there now. If you also count the second half of last season, where they really developed the bike and it was actually already on par with the Ducatis, or maybe even past them if you count out what Marc Marquez was able to do on that bike. And in that aspect, they just continued that line of performance, that curve of performance. So if you see the winter test, they were just steady, especially Marco Bezzecchi. So in that aspect, it wasn't a big surprise, but it's just still a bit hard to believe because Aprilia for so long has been the team of, pretty much a good load of fun and not too serious. And there it goes to the bike again. It's it breaks down again, and silly
yeah,
Aprilia.
they used to have.
But and now they are up there. And that's not even that long ago. I mean, if you remember Vinales and Espargaro riding for them, they were good riders, obviously, but it was still the team of, do they finish the race or does it break down? And in a matter of 2 seasons, really, they are up there. And I think nothing that we saw this weekend and in preseason and at the end of last season should suggest like, this is just the weird circumstances of Buriram. It was so hot and it's maybe an outlier of a track. While I think layout wise it isn't really. So yeah, I think we're up for a change of how do you say that? A change
of the guard.
A change of the guard. Yeah.
Mm. Danny, is it true? Is it true?
I'd have to say no, based on historic performance. Based on this race, yes, they look like they'll be a title contender, but you have to look at it over the whole season. We've not seen it from them yet. They looked a lot better last season, but they're still a bit too up and down for me, a bit too peaky. And plus, Bezzecchi, I put in the WhatsApp group to us, obviously. He started winning races. He's now got that eagerness. He's, potentially in a championship battle. And he's just pushing too hard, which is what we've seen consistently from people when they all of a sudden start to get into a championship battle. So I think even if he has the bike to put a championship fight against Marc and the Ducatis we were expecting, I just think Bez will make too many mistakes and hit the deck. Next season, potentially, if the bike carries on the trajectory on the performance. But this season, personally, I think it's a bit too early. I think we'll have some great battles. I think he'll definitely be close. But we'll see. It all depends how good Marc can come back from his injury.
I think that's a really, really fair point Danny made. I mean, the bike can be there, but will the riders be? And exactly what Danny says, Bezzecchi needs to stay on the bike because we said this in the group chat when he went down on the Saturday. Like, it just feels like this happens to him still a bit too often, like going down for no reason. And if you obviously want to fight for a title, you can't really have that. And it's one thing having a bike and winning races, but getting used to that and getting to know, how do I ride races like this? How do I dictate from up front, for instance? It must be a different skill set. So imagine Bezzecchi keeps doing this every 3 or 4 races, and imagine Jorge Martin, getting in shape really quick. I mean, he if anyone of the two has proven that he knows how to bring a winning bike home and to reel in the wins and be consistent, that was Jorge Martin's championship winning season. So to make things even more berserk, maybe, I mean, imagine Jorge Martin being in the running after 4 or 5 races.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely brilliant. It's something we couldn't really predict because we just think it's too damaged goods with Aprilia at the moment anyway. So there is quite an important context we haven't mentioned yet around this Aprilia performance. And the context is, this is on the special the heat-treated, harder casing rear tyre and sweltering conditions where the Aprilia always seems to go really well. And I mean, think back to Indonesia. I think was it last year, Bez pace-wise was absolutely untouchable. No one could get near him all weekend, and the Aprilias are really, really quick. We know Agura was quick here on the Aprilia last year. I think Bez should have been really much faster here last year, but they kind of had a really messy opening few weekends as a full factory rider for Bez before he got his head around it and started really performing. So it'd be fascinating to see. There's something about this rear tyre that the Aprilia absolutely loves, and the real hot conditions, but that used to be their Achilles heel. The Aprilia was famous for quite literally cooking its riders with it being so hot, and some of them actually, I think, was it Aleix once actually, or the Maverick had to retire from one of the races because the bike was literally burning him. It was so hot on the bike. So the fact that they're loving the hot conditions and they're looking after their tyre really well is just saying this might just be a flash in a pan, but I don't think so. They've made such a stride from last year, and it's amazing to see, because look at Fernandez. Raul Fernandez, incredible. 2 times P3s. I mean, he sorted himself out back into last year, and obviously getting that fantastic win at Phillip Island. But his 3rd in the championship. Agura had a 4th and a 5th. It is pretty hard to ignore that. The Aprilia looked like the dominant bike this weekend, really. So yeah, it's absolutely fascinating to see how it plays out. Of course, we're going to use this casing, this special tyre at the next round in Brazil as well, I think. So it could be, expect Aprilias up there again, because the track looks like it's got some fast sweepers. So with the Aprilia, we think is probably one of the best bikes out there. Another one I want to ask a question to you to move on to our second subject is Acosta doing Marquez things with that KTM? Or has KTM made the massive stride forward? Danny, it was so good to see Acosta up there consistently fighting. But he does seem to be the standout KTM.
Yeah, by a country mile. He actually this weekend looked like the rider we expect him to be, at the level we expect him to be. As we said, last season he struggled a little bit, had a great first season, but yeah, he looked fantastic all weekend, quick, did well in qualifying, did excellent in the sprint. In the race, he dropped to 7th and come back through the pack up to the front. He was chasing everybody down. Yeah, solid. And I think he's put in the performance we all expected. And the good news is he's done it in the first race of the season rather than having to wait quite a long time into it.
I think what we see is sometimes you think, testing points us in this or that direction. I mean, the Ducatis seemed like they were up there, and the KTM seemed quite a way, a few tenths back. And then the first race weekend, and things turn out to be different. The worrying thing for me is indeed that he was about the only one on a KTM, being up there at with the front pack. And yeah, does that mean he's doing the Marquez things? Yeah, you could say he is. I mean, but this is just, again, just one race. Let's see how this goes forward. And was he is it maybe a bit flattered with the Ducatis not performing at all this weekend? Maybe, but we should not forget that he started P6, and then to really play such a role in both the sprint and the main race. Yeah, I mean, everybody's been saying like he is a really special kid, and he's one of the 3 maybe alien riders on this grid. I think maybe this weekend was the first time we really saw that from him. So yeah, that's at least encouraging.
Yeah, good point. Similar to what Danny said, yeah, and made a great point. Fantastic first season where everyone was like, this is a certified alien right here, because he was doing it on the gas, which was a KTM, but in a private team, Yeah, and we all thought this guy's genuine. But then last year he didn't turn up, did he? He turned up with the wrong attitude, frustrated. This round last year he had a bit of a disaster. I think he binned it out of P7 this time last year, and he was struggling, and the tensions with the team were getting bad. His attitude was all wrong, and this year he has turned up, and this is the Pedro Acosta that we want, and he's gone certified alien status again, Danny.
Yeah, what it reminds me of is what we see quite often, innit? Young rider comes into all this hype, has a fantastic first season. The hype kind of goes to the head, and they have a bit of a dip in the second season, kind of believing the hype and everything else, and that they're untouchable, and then they come back to earth in the third season and start banging in the results again.
Yeah. So let's look at some of the other KTMs that we've got going here. We've got Binder was P6 in the sprint and P7 in the GP, so he was pretty much up there. But in terms of sort of time and raw race pace, he was still quite far behind. And the Tech 3 guys, I mean, they had a mare here last year, but Bastianini did salvage a 12th, I think it was, in the race last year, and some crazy late race pace from nowhere. But he was on suicide watch during testing, saying, I just can't make it work. This bike's awful. I can't make it work for me. And it was Maverick who was really calm last year, saying the results are bad, but it will come. And they did. But Maverick was nowhere. He was like last KTM all year. I know he's had a complex shoulder injury, a bit like sort of Mark, Jules. But on the Works boys on the KTMs were pretty good, but Tech 3 had an absolute mare this weekend.
Yeah, and the weird thing is, especially last season, these bikes really started to be pretty similar. During the course of last season, all four of them went into the same direction development wise, and they were pretty competitive. You had some really strong Paul Espargaro performances as a I want to say credit card rider, but I mean wild card riders last season on the KTM.
That's the one.
It's really, yeah, and and in the preseason, we had the KTM riders, especially Acosta, say like, "Oh yeah, we solved our biggest problem, the tire eating, which Binder suffered off quite a lot too." And then Mav, as we already pointed out in our preseason show, like, oh, he had this crazy good winter with Jorge Lorenzo being his rider coach and everything. So the disappointment of the weekend was Maverick Vinales, and it's really harsh on the guy. But yeah, they were nowhere, and they just couldn't get this tire working for them, which is really odd for pretty much four of the same bikes.
Yeah, it is strange to see in the different directions, and they were on multiple different directions last season. So it'd be interesting. Mav will probably come good. I think he's a bit weak from his injury, or maybe Jorge Lorenzo chilled him out a little bit too much in his head of being a rider coach. This is where I like to have my little host interlude, really. So if you're interlude even. So if you're enjoying the show, then why not give us a like or a favourable rating on your podcast platform of choice? Maybe you have some suggestions or general feedback for us. Then you can email us at mrapexmoto@gmail.com. That's mrapexmoto, all one word, @gmail.com. And as mentioned at the top of the show, we now have a fantasy MotoGP league. Put your team together and come and join us to test your team selection skills against the crew and your fellow listeners alike. It's super easy to set up. Go in there, register, join our league. We will pop a link to our league in the description of this video if you're on YouTube, or in the show notes, or somewhere in the title or description. You should be able to find a link for the league. So come and join us and see how well your team selection skills stack up against us. And I'll give you a little hint. Me and Danny are not doing well. After the first round, we're pretty much last. So that's a funny thing. But don't be last and don't be left out. So come and join us with the league. It's a bit of fun. We've never done anything like this before, but it's all a good bit of fun. It makes the weekends a little bit more spicy when you're watching. So then, let's go on to our third subject, and Ducati. We've got to talk about Ducati, really. Are they in trouble? They never really looked settled throughout the weekend. Mark, I'm going to get this one out there. I think Mark is actually a bit more injured and quite a bit worse physically than he's actually letting on. I think he had some sort of bug. He looked weak and a bit gaunt, and the fact that he's made the aero decision and he was slowing down the race to not only conserve his tyres but to conserve himself. I don't think we had a fully fit or 100% performing Marc Marquez this weekend. But Jules, Digi was looking pretty strong. Fabio Di Giannantonio was looking pretty strong. He was punted wide by Alex Marquez, but recovered all the way to P8 in the sprint and 6th in the GP, but apparently with loads of problems. So if you look at Digi, it's not looking that bad for Ducati.
It's just such a weird picture they painted in Thailand. The testing just a week earlier, when pretty well. They were up there with Bezecchi top of the timesheets. The Friday morning was pretty much the same either, really. That didn't seem to be a real problem going on. But come the Friday mid afternoon practice, they just started to struggle. And several of their riders, Bagnaia, Morbidelli, said the grip of the test session it's gone, and the rear tire not working well for them, and they couldn't understand why, and it felt quite a bit like Pecco Bagnaia last year, which we'll come to later. But yeah, are they in trouble? If you want to look at it from a negative point of view, then your answer would be yes, but it would be yes because they had to revert back to 2-year-old arrows. Their bike is if we are to read between the lines of all the reports, is actually also pretty much a 2-year-old bike, and that means they in 2 winters they haven't succeeded in developing this bike further. And maybe they hit their ceiling. They obviously have the least test time and tires to test and opportunities to test because of the concessions. But it just seems like they're stuck with what they had in 24, and the others have caught up. So yeah, it's so hard because again, this was a weird weekend, but I'm definitely sure this was not what they expected when Friday first practice started. It can't be.
Absolutely, yeah. So, Danny, would you be hitting the panic button right now, or not really?
Watching the bike when it was racing around, definitely. Mark didn't look like he could hit an Apex if he'd have been out there.
You'd be
all
hitting
day
the
long.
panic button, would you?
Yeah, I would be. Yeah, the bike looked really difficult watching him. When you watched him battle Acosta could just turn harder, faster. It looked all at sea. However, hopefully it'll come good, but they didn't look incredibly amazing in testing either. So, yeah, be interesting. Watch this space. But yeah, they look like they're in trouble currently.
The odd thing is, Jules, like they seem relatively happy in testing.
Yeah, but it's like Danny said, they weren't super convincing, but there was also, I guess, well, if you're up there with only Bezecchi, the faster guy, yeah, well, okay, but I think the worrying thing to see in the races especially was like you guys said, it didn't look like Mark could push that bike to his limit. Maybe because of his physical condition still, but also the other Ducati riders, they couldn't like make up the positions. And in earlier seasons, if you were having a Pecco Bagnaia day and missing out on Q2, okay, starting P13, you would still like bring that bike back up to P6, P5, and if some of them went down, maybe even a podium, But none of them could like really make up places or get into the fights and come out on top of them. Alex Marquez, for instance, he started P7, I think, somewhere around that.
It's P7, yeah.
We haven't seen him all weekend. Obviously, he crashed out of the. Did he crash out of sprint or the main race?
No, he punted Digi. Remember, out of the he punted Digi and fell right back down the field and couldn't progress, as you well point out. Yeah. And then in the actual main race, he binned it. He binned it, and he binned it out of P8. And it wasn't great crash. He'd already been passed by Mir, who was doing really well. And he said a really weird crash. He lost the front. I think it was in turn 4, like really fast, odd crash. But you make a great point there that they were struggling to fight back through. One of them that did manage to fight back through was Digi himself. But apparently he reckons he finished P6 in the end, which wasn't bad at all. But he reckoned his bike was malfunctioning. And I can't find anything on this really, but he reckons his bike was misbehaving loads in the second half of the race. So he was frustrated because actually look at his long run paces. I think he was actually faster than Marquez this weekend. And Mark obviously had that freak tyre pop he broke the rim by running off the end of the curbs, and it was really funny. There was David Tadotse was a scene going out to the curb himself after the race and taking pictures of it. I don't know whether he's going to make his insurance claim against it or something, but it was very odd, unlucky for Mark, but it was Mark. Mark was quite right to say, because it was his mistake. He made the mistake and went wide. I thought maybe the delamination caused him to go wide, but he made a mistake, saying he'd done it loads in testing, flew off the end of the curb, and it must be a super unlucky angle. Everything's hot. All of the alloys are getting hot and maybe a bit more malleable and a bit softer. So that caused a rapid delamination. So bit of a nightmare for Ducati. But again, they said the bike just didn't work compared to the test, how they expected. Because let's go on to Bagnaia, because Bagnaia said he was really happy in testing. He had a constant smile on his face, was very happy, thought he got his feelings back, and it's all great, and got absolutely trounced, basically. Couldn't get through Q1, P9 in the sprint and the GP, considering 3 people retired ahead of him in the GP as well. Absolutely, really, that's really bad. Both Marquez's and Mir retire ahead of him, and he still could only manage a P9. And he got mugged by his stablemate, Frankie Morbidelli, on the last corner of the last lap. He got absolutely mugged. And Frankie's on a Frankenstein GP24, GP25. So in general, absolute nightmare. And this is the 2025 Bagnaia, unfortunately. And we thought we were going to see more of it. But he did very much list this special rear tyre that we have. And that would be an issue. So I want to move on quickly because we're running out of time. I could talk about the Ducati sagas all day long. But let's get on to some honourable mentions. And I want to talk about Honda a little bit, because Honda, we just mentioned there with Mir, Danny, were pretty quick. Like, Mir retired from P6, but he was rapid.
Yeah, Mir would have been my rider in the race if he hadn't retired. It was a shame. Done a great job all weekend. Looked really good in the sprint, looked really good in the race. The bike's looking good compared to where they were. Again, another step in the right direction to get back towards the front of the field.
I think Mir he surprised me this weekend, because you mentioned doing the fantasy teams just now, Carl, and you know, I was doing that, and I needed a really budget rider to do my last bit of the money I had, but and Sean Mir was there, and you think like, oh yeah, he's a world champion, but then, oh yeah, he goes down a lot. Oh yeah, he hasn't done anything really, but he's on a bad bike. So how to rate Sean Mir? But I felt, this weekend he was up there, right behind the big guys fighting for the podium positions. He was there. It was a shame his bike broke down, but I think he showed that Honda definitely did make that step compared to last season, when they already made such a good step. And the other rider who I thought was showing real promise was Diogo Moreira. I mean, we haven't really seen him because he was in P14, P13, that region. But he's one of the 2 rookies this season, and I mean, he's the Moto2 world champion. But I thought I was looking at that a bit, and he was up there, pretty much doing the same as Johan Zarco and Luca Marini. So I mean, there was not a lot rookie about him, and I thought it was really a really strong first MotoGP race, but in these circumstances. So yeah, him and Mir, Honda showing promise, I thought.
Yeah, that's really, really good. Very strong debut. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Moreira, because he was really good in the sprint. I mean, at one point in the sprint, I think he was up to like P9 or 10. He was like, he had a rapid start and was doing really well, and gradually fell back. Sweltering conditions, really, really hard things, and obviously a slightly difficult bike. He was doing really, really well. So other people who weren't doing well, well, Yamaha, I want to finish, unfortunately, on a bit of a negative with the Yamaha crisis. Oh, dearie me. We are rapidly running out of time, so we can't go into too much detail, but highest runner in the sprint was Miller, P15. 14th in the main race for Fabio Quartararo. Very unhappy. If you saw him in testing, getting angry with the bike. They were 30 seconds down on Bezzecchi in the race, which is absolutely tragic. And which is really rare to see as well, was Yamaha have kept their riders away from the press. None of the Yamaha riders actually gave an interview at the end of the race. And I don't know whether that's a conscious decision from Yamaha, Jules, but they sent the boss out, Paolo Pavesio, probably murdered his name there, and he faced the media instead of the riders and publicly apologised to the riders. So do you think they were just sparing their riders for the briefing and being nice to them, or were they actively keeping them away from a microphone so they couldn't throw them under the bus?
I think they were definitely keeping Fabio Quartararo away, and also Alex Rins, because Alex Rins, after testing already, came out and said like, after getting off the bike, I need to be in my motorhome first to rage and then talk to the press. So, I mean, clearly they don't want that kind of publicity anymore, but to like keep away Toprak, from his debut MotoGP race.
Yeah,
And
great
I mean,
point.
he's not gonna talk down the Yamaha. I mean, you don't even want to ask him that. You want to talk to him like, how was this, and what were your experiences, and etc. I thought that was a real shame, because I'd like to hear from him.
It
But
was. He had
apart
a really good debut as well, actually, considering he's on the clearly the worst bike in the field. He finished ahead of Jack Miller in the main race.
Definitely.
Like, amazing. Like, Toprak was P17, and he wasn't that far away really from Quartararo. How far was he? He was 9 seconds away from Quartararo, so that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, and in the sprint where he eventually he went down, but he was the second Yamaha in the standing at that point, behind Quartararo. So I mean, I thought he had, given the circumstances, pretty decent debut, but we didn't hear from that. And the only thing, and then I'll shut up about it. I mean, Paolo Pavesio, indeed, he goes out to say sorry to all the media, to the whole world. I wonder how the chiefs in Japan looked at that, and if that was discussed with them. I mean, you're talking about a proud Japanese big motor brand, and then you have this guy saying, "Oh yeah, sorry, we built you guys such a bad bike." I mean, oof, that's rough.
That is bad. So yeah, it's bad to end on a negative note with Yamaha, but hopefully they will get better soon. So we mentioned the standings in there. Let's have a quick look at the standings before we wrap up then. So it's Pedro Acosta actually leading the championship now with 7 points over Marco Bezzecchi, with Raul Fernandez in third, Jorge Martin in fourth, and Ayagura in fifth. So that's I make that 4 Aprilias in the top 5 in the championship, which is absolutely amazing. Then Brad Binder's in sixth, and then the first Ducati in the standings is in seventh, which is Fabio Di Giannantonio, which is absolutely crazy. Then we've got Marc Marquez, Franco Morbidelli, and Francesco Bagnaia in 10th. So we have run out of time. We won't be doing any rider or moment of the weekend awards this week, but we have a 3-week gap now, I believe, until the Brazilian round, which is a new circuit. And in the middle of that, we might have an exciting new MotoGP fan to bring to you on a bit of an episode introduction. We'll see if we can get him on, but we might have a special guest. So we'll see how that goes. But thank you very much for joining us for round 1. We hope you enjoyed the race as much as we did. As I said, it's 3 weeks until Brazil, but we may be back a little bit before that. As always, thanks for listening to Missed Apex MotoGP.